The Eiffel Tower was supposed to come down in 1909. Everyone knows the Eiffel Tower. It's the symbol of Paris, of France itself. But what almost nobody knows is that this monument, the most recognizable structure on Earth, was supposed to be torn down after 20 years. It survived because of something nobody planned for. It turned out to be one of the best antennas ever built. In 1887, the French civil engineer Alexandre Gustave Eiffel struck a deal with the city of Paris. He would build a 300-meter iron tower for the 1889 Exposition Universelle, the World's Fair. And in return, he'd get a 20-year operating concession. The tower was completed and opened to the public on May 15, 1889. Fairgoers could climb it for 5 francs, roughly $30 in today's money, and take a 360-degree view of Paris and the festivities below. But the clock was already ticking, 20 years. That was the deal. After the fair, Eiffel didn't just sit back and sell tickets. He made the tower a platform for science, meteorology, aerodynamics, and wind resistance experiments. He understood that a 300-meter vertical structure above Paris was something no laboratory could replicate, and that scientific value would soon matter more than anyone expected. On November 5, 1898, a French instrument maker and wireless experimenter named Eugène Ducretet climbed the tower with an unusual idea. He wanted to send a wireless telegraph signal, not through wires, but through the air itself. Using a Branly-Cohen receiver, he transmitted a signal from the Eiffel Tower to the Pantheon, roughly 2.5 miles across Paris. It was a temporary installation, a demonstration, not a permanent station, but it was the first hint of what this iron tower could do for radio. A French army officer named Gustave Ferrié took notice. Ferrié was an engineer and a key organizer of radiotelegraphy for the French military. He understood something most people didn't. Height matters for long-wave signals over far greater distances than low wire. For long-wave wireless telegraphy, dots and dashes sent through the air as Morse code. A tall aerial could transmit and receive signals over far greater distances than a low wire, and the Eiffel Tower was the tallest structure in the world. 5 years after Ducretet's experiment in 1903, Ferrié organized military wireless experiments using the tower. The next year, 1904, the French military placed him in charge of France's military wireless telegraphy. He pointed to the prior experiments and argued that the tower's height and location made it an indispensable antenna support. Eiffel cooperated, making the site available. The installation was completed in 1906, a permanent military radiotelegraph station operating from the tower. Then in 1909, the deadline arrived. Eiffel's 20-year concession expired. By the original agreement, the city of Paris could have taken the tower down, but instead of dismantling it, the city took over ownership and decided it should remain. Because by then, the tower wasn't just a fair attraction. It was a functioning military communications site, a scientific platform, and a strategic national asset. The military expanded the installation, building a permanent underground radio center near the south pillar and running long aerial wires from the tower's cupola to anchors on the Champ de Mars. That underground facility still exists today. The tower hadn't been saved by one person or one decision. Eiffel made it scientifically useful. Ferrié had made it militarily essential. The city and the state recognized that tearing down a working strategic antenna would be madness. In 1910, the Paris Observatory began sending time signals from the tower, precise clock pulses that could be received by ships and observatories up to about 5,000 kilometers away. The Eiffel Tower was now part of the International Timekeeping Network. Radio wasn't just military anymore, it was public infrastructure. On November 20th, 1913, the Paris Observatory and the United States Naval Observatory used the Eiffel Tower and an aerial in Arlington, Virginia, to exchange wireless signals and measure the longitudinal distance between Paris and Washington. The New York Times documented the event. A signal from Paris had crossed the Atlantic, not as a broadcast, but as a precise scientific measurement that connected 2 continents. 1 year later, war broke out in Europe, and the Eiffel Tower faced its first real test. During the First Battle of Marne in September 1914, the battle that halted the German advance on Paris, the tower's radio station was used for the French military communications and for intercepting enemy signals. Historical accounts also credit the station with jamming German communications, though the exact scale of its impact is debated. The Eiffel Tower didn't win the Battle of Marne on its own, but it played a role in the French war effort that no other structure in France could have played. In 1917, the tower station is often associated with the interception of a German message referencing the code H21, a code linked to the Dutch-born dancer and accused spy Mata Hari. She was convicted of espionage, and the intercepted message is widely cited as part of the case against her. But historians have debated the fairness of that conviction and the role the tower intercept actually played. What's certain is that the Eiffel Tower had become one of the most important signals intelligence sites in Europe. After the war ended in 1918, the tower took on a new role, one that would reach into every home in France. On December 24, 1921, the Eiffel Tower transmitted one of France's first public broadcast programs: weather reports, music, and news. This service became known as Radio Tour Eiffel. By 1922, it was a regular fixture in French society, and in 1925, Radio Tour Eiffel was reorganized as Radio Paris, a state-run station with scheduled programming that helped define French broadcasting. The tower's communication role kept growing. In 1935, it became one of the first transmitting sites for television transmitters. The iron lattice that critics once called an eyesore had become the tallest, most important broadcast mast in the country. A structure that was supposed to be torn down after the World's Fair became a military communications hub, a signals intelligence station, a national timekeeper, and the birthplace of French broadcasting. The Eiffel Tower didn't survive because Paris fell in love with iron. It survived because wireless telegraphy turned 300 meters of steel into the most valuable antenna in France. And once you have an antenna that important, you don't tear it down. If you like forgotten radio history stories, subscribe. The next one will blow your mind.